Welcome to the Money Minus Shame podcast powered by the Financial Therapy Clinical Institute, where we make money human. Here, we eliminate shame from the financial experience and drive money conversations to be holistic and human first. I'm your host, Nate Astle, and welcome to Money Minus Shame. Hello and welcome to Money Minus Shame. I'm Nate Astle. I'm a marriage and family therapist and a certified financial therapist, and I am joined here today by Tyrone White. We talk about how do we take shame out of personal finance and how do we connect both our mental health and our financial health. We hope you will stay and learn a thing or two, feel a thing or two, and deconstruct shame from your money a little bit more. Tyrone, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Tyrone. I love personal finance, and I am a certified financial therapist and a credit financial counselor.
We are part of the Financial Therapy Clinical Institute. I'm the founder, and Tyrone, you've been doing an excellent job as the COO, which is fun with all these titles. Tyrone, what has financial therapy been like as you've been learning about it?
It's been interesting because it was something that was new to me, because when I jumped into personal finance, it was very just a normal financial advisor. But when we got into financial therapy, get into more of the emotional side of things, it really pulled me in and I got extremely interested in it. And I was like, how do I get more involved? I think when you get interested in something, you're like, what do I need to do to get more involved in the space? And that kind of led me to get my certification in financial therapy. What got you involved? Like, what's financial therapy? You probably can explain it better than I can.
Financial therapy is a process to change the way we think, feel, and behave around money. It's a really unique thing because I think a lot of traditional financial planning, financial advising tends to be very tunnel visioned. It's very much just about the numbers. It's about how do we make the math. But the truth is money is incredibly emotional. It's a psychological process more than anything. So financial therapy takes psychological tools, takes therapeutic skills, and applies them to money. Like, how do we change the way that we experience money? How do we work through our financial anxiety? How do we work through our financial shame, which is a huge deal? And so it's really important that we have not just like financial skills and number skills, but also making sure that we're working with the people side of this, because in the end, that's the thing that matters.
Okay. When you're working with people, what helps you identify some of these emotional triggers and emotional things that happen, like when you're actually working with people? Like, what helps you with that type of stuff?
A lot of what I'm doing in financial therapy is asking why. Why are people experiencing money the way they are? And I'm glad you brought up emotions, because that's a big why for people. You know, when we start working on the relationship with money and people are like, I have financial anxiety and I want to change, I don't want to feel this anxious every time I look at my bills. A lot of what I start doing is figuring out, when did it start getting hard to make financial choices? When did the anxiety start? Is the anxiety something that you've always had? Like, I've just always been anxious and recently it's latched itself onto money? Or did something happen either recently or growing up where money became an unsafe experience, where fear became the natural response? Sometimes it's specific incidences, like my dad got fired from his job, and then I remember the stress we all had as a family, or I remember my mom crying or, saying a mean thing to my dad. Like, are there specific incidences leading to financial anxiety, or is it coming from a buildup of smaller things over time? Maybe there wasn't a big event like my dad lost a job, but maybe I just remember generally I couldn't afford things that my friends could afford, and that left me feeling like I wasn't enough. And then when I stopped being able to pay for my bills or something happened, now that feeling of not being enough is coming up in my present. So I'm trying to look for the whys. What's underneath all this financial feeling?
It sounds to me a lot like dealing with the past and kind of financial trauma at times. Can you explain a little bit more about financial trauma and how it affects people and how you work with people that's doing financial trauma a little bit?
Financial trauma is something that comes up more sessions than it doesn't. When we think about trauma, we typically think of singular events, right? Like a car accident or something, or PTSD after a battle. And that certainly is very traumatic, and trauma is one of those things. It's not just what happens to you, it's also how your brain copes with or deals with those stressful situations. I'll put my educator hat on just real quick. Our brain does a whole lot of things that keeps us safe. It's a very important part of how we live our lives. But there's a couple of processes in our brains that are automatic. Okay, we don't choose to think about them. Breathing would be one, or digesting food. These are all things that happen automatically. There's one process, though, our fight or flight responses, that are also automatic. And these responses come from our amygdala, and they're specifically designed to keep us safe. So if we were in a jungle and a tiger jumps out at us, we need to be able to react instantly to that threat. We don't need to sit and think, what should I do about this tiger? We need to be like, oh my gosh, there's a tiger. I got to either fight this thing off or run away. There's also freeze and fawn responses. Maybe I just freeze up and hope the tiger leaves me alone. It's kind of the animal equivalent of playing dead. Or I fawn, I appease the tiger. Maybe I throw a piece of meat the other direction. These instincts are built into us as survival mechanisms. How they're supposed to work is once we get through the danger, once we fight off the tiger, we then come back to kind of normal brain functioning. Whew, that was scary, but I'm safe now. I can continue about my day. The problem becomes when we are in those types of situations for long periods of time or for high intensity situations, our brain locks onto it. And that amygdala starts to misfire. And we start feeling that danger, that panic, even in non-threatening situations. And or we also are numb to situations that we actually do need to kind of be aware of. That is what trauma is, where our brains are no longer able to tell what is a threat or not. And so financial trauma comes from these sometimes financial experiences. Sometimes it's not a financial experience, but it keeps us in that fight or flight headspace. And we're then struggling to do kind of some of our more basic financial behaviors. Maybe I'm freaking out anytime a credit card bill comes in, not because that credit card bill is actually going to physically hurt me like a tiger would, but because my brain is so activated by my fear that this feels like a tiger attack. That's kind of a big part of what I do in financial therapy, is helping people recognize their financial traumas, but then also work through them so that they're able to see things as kittens, not tigers.
It makes me also think about like financial anxiety. Is there a link between like financial trauma and financial anxiety? And does people get financial anxiety from traumas, or can they just have it all on their own?
It's definitely both. Anxiety it can be something you have on its own, right? But anxiety is also a common response to traumas. So, people with financial trauma experiences, they can develop anxiety, they can develop depression. Very commonly, there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes up when we have these really significant financial experiences. But anxiety definitely can live on its own as well. If maybe I didn't have anything super crazy happen to me in my life that made me feel unsafe, but I just have a genetic predisposition towards anxiety, that still can show up in your money. And it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It's not like we can dismiss feelings just because we're not able to tie a direct cause to it. Humans are not cause and effect like that. There's a million causes and there's a million effects. And we're just trying to figure out what's going on and what can we do better.
Okay. So when we first started talking about the financial anxiety, you brought up shame and guilt. How do you support people dealing with feelings of shame and guilt when it comes to their finances?
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest challenges or symptoms I see is shame around money. Money is something, unfortunately, that our culture has moralized. Like, our money is a reflection of who we are. It's seen as a reflection of our self-discipline. When I say moralize, like right and wrong with money, truth is it's really not a right and wrong thing. What's right for me financially may not be what's right for you financially. And the problem is when we have this super myopic or like tunnel vision view of what our personal finances are, quote, supposed to be, then when we inevitably don't live up to those expectations, we feel like crap because we feel like it's somehow our deficiencies. There's something wrong with me that I can't figure out my money. I didn't try hard enough. If only I could get my shit together. If only I could just be more disciplined. It's really not fair. It's really not. Problem is that we often interchange guilt and shame, but they're very different things. Guilt is the natural response I have when I act outside of my values. When I had a rough day and my partner and I get into a fight and I yell. Later, I might feel guilt because I don't want to yell. That's not how I want to be or show up in my relationships. And although it's a super uncomfortable feeling, guilt is useful. Guilt can motivate us to make change. It might motivate me to apologize. It might motivate me to try and do better next time. It might motivate me to go to therapy, try and figure out what's causing some of these explosive outbursts. When we act outside of our values, guilt is a natural response. And I do know it can be a super uncomfortable one, but it's not necessarily bad or harmful. However, shame is when we take that guilt or we take that feeling of I did something bad and we start labeling ourselves with it. It's not just that I did a bad thing, it's that I am a bad thing. It's not that I yelled at my partner and I need to do better. It's I'm an angry person. I only hurt others. It's not that I made a money mistake. It's that I'm bad with money. Shame is inherently demotivating. One of my favorite things I like to say, shame is the enemy of change. If I genuinely believe that I am defective, there's something wrong with me, why would I put the effort in to making changes to it? If I feel like this is a feature, not a bug of who I am, then why would I try to do something different? Shame is something that hurts our mental health. It makes us depressed. It hurts our relationships. And shame is something that we need to be able to kind of call out. And this is what I try to do in our sessions is recognizing shame when it's happening and challenge those shameful thoughts. Hang on, I made a mistake, but those mistakes don't define me. I can do better and I'm still a good person. We don't need to use shame to motivate behavior change because it might work in the short term, but it has super long lasting consequences.
It sounds like shame and guilt can cause these barriers for us, these emotional barriers when it comes around money. And in your experience, what are some of the most common barriers that stop people from helping them process their financial situations or financial decisions?
Big ones are guilt and shame. It's uncomfortable emotions. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's shame, maybe it's anger, or sadness. We're just trying to avoid things that our brain perceives as harmful. I don't blame people for that. I get it. There's lots of things that I've avoided in my life because it's hard. I don't blame anybody for that. And we have to recognize that avoiding hard emotions, it's not a sustainable way to deal with issues. And quite honestly, when we avoid problems, most of the time they get worse.
If you don't mind, can you share an example of a client that maybe their emotions influence their financial decisions and show us how guilt, maybe shame can impact this in our journey?
I see a lot of couples and almost all the time, there's one person making more than the other person is, right? It's very rare that both of you have the exact same salary. And when that person that's making less, especially if it's a man or someone who may have those kind of internalized beliefs that I'm supposed to make more money or I'm supposed to be the breadwinner. There's a lot of gender roles that we need to talk about too. That is something frequently that leads to shame. I'm not enough because I'm not making enough. And so then when he and his partner are trying to have a conversation around, should we go on a vacation or should we set some extra money aside to build an emergency fund, whatever financial decision it is, then I start feeling like, what does it matter anyway? I'm not doing what I can already. I'm a failure. And then I start avoiding these conversations. And then my partner and I start getting some resentment. Maybe they're like, what the heck, dude? We need to make these decisions. Like we need to be able to talk about hard things, but you won't. Or every time we do, you get defensive and then I get activated. And so it's just showing how like shame around internalized gender roles and money then leads to shutting down, leads to avoiding, leads to couple conflict. And when they come to me and they're like, hey, we need help talking about money, is part of what I'm trying to figure out is what are the pieces that contribute to your fighting?
Going back to what you said earlier about like clients and gender roles and somebody making more money than the other and expectations and kind of like people's upbringing influence the money, definitely something I see quite a bit when I'm working with people. That definitely plays a huge factor in our conversations or making decisions around money. Those things are definitely big in making those decisions and helping people along the process.
I wanted to ask you actually. I know you're newer to financial therapy, but what's the difference between financial counseling and financial therapy?
I think the biggest thing is when we're doing financial counseling, we're focusing a lot more on the numbers. We're doing I like to call it spending plan, kind of helps with the mindset a little bit, but budgeting. You're focusing more on the numbers. You're helping developing goals around money and financial goals, developing a plan that works for the both of you. If you're a couple, if it's just you, it's work best for you. But when I'm working with couples, it's what's best for both of them and trying to create a system that works best for both of them to make progress. And then financial therapy is definitely more the emotion side. Why are we feeling this way? How did you grow up with money? What was the atmosphere like when you was growing up with money? Because usually, not all the time, but usually it gives you a good indication of how they develop their financial ideas, how they feel about money. It definitely focuses more on that side than the feeling side of money. But I would say that it's really hard to make progress on the financial counseling side without that financial therapy side of it, because it's going to play a factor in those financial decisions and sticking with the plan. And I could tell you how many times I work with people and they're like, hey, I know we got a plan, but I still stressed out about money. I still feel anxiety around money. And no matter how many plans you make, even if it's a great plan, if you still have those feelings about money, is going to cause some type of barrier.
I think that's actually a really important thing that we need to talk about is financial therapy and financial counseling, financial planning. All of these pieces of our financial health are important. If we are trying to figure out our numbers, but we're not talking about our communication, or we're not talking about our emotions or our traumas or the things that are contributing to maybe the decisions we're making, honestly, the numbers won't matter a whole lot. Conversely, if we're able to do all this work around our feeling and emotions, but if it's not leading to actual change in what we do, like with our actual numbers, that also has some drawbacks. So I think it's so important that we have all these pieces, because financial health it's a big picture kind of goal. It's kind of like physical health. It's not just about muscles. It's also about flexibility. It's also about, what you're eating. It's about exercise. Like there's so many pieces to physical health. There's a lot of pieces to financial health too.
So what do you focus on to help clients build healthier relationships with money?
A lot of it is building healthy relationships with themselves. A lot of the stuff that I start with is emotion identification and emotion expression. So basically, I need to be able to know, what do I feel when I think about money? What do I feel when I go grocery shopping? What do I feel when I see the credit card bill come in? That emotion is actually a super rich source of information. I'm asking people to start recognizing what are the emotions that are potentially driving my financial choices, but also just my day-to-day. What am I feeling in my day-to-day? One of my favorite tools that I use is called the feelings wheel. You can just Google feelings wheel. There's a worksheet on our website that shows you how to use it, but it's just building language around, okay, what am I feeling? And maybe I only have access to happy, sad, scared, angry. There's actually a lot more detail that we can get from, maybe I'm not angry, I'm let down, or I'm humiliated, or I'm feeling withdrawn or disconnected. Maybe I'm not happy, I'm proud, I'm excited, I'm maybe also a little worried. Maybe I'm not scared, I'm anxious, or I'm feeling insecure, not worthy or something. Like all of these things, the more that we can express and come close to that emotion, the better we get at being able to respond to it. So like a lot of what I'm doing in the early stages is helping people figure out what am I feeling and then being able to express it. Sometimes with me, definitely with partners and things, because the more that we can do that, the more that we're able to say, oh, I'm feeling fear. How do I want to respond to that fear? Underneath every emotion is a need. What is the need driving my emotion? I need connection. I need reassurance. I need more information or more data. I need to feel loved, to feel accepted. Then I can start asking myself, can I meet that need outside of my finances? A lot of people use their finances as a way to, I have a financial solution to what is an emotional problem. And so if I can figure out some of the emotion type stuff, I'm more able to come up with other solutions. Maybe I don't need to buy the candy bar in the checkout aisle because I've had a hard day. Maybe what I need to do is call a friend on the way home, or journal for a bit, or just find some way to move through this emotion. And yeah, the candy bar might be a small example, but we do that same thing all the time with our retail therapy or shopping trips. Like small moments can lead to big shifts. One of my favorite quotes is, large doors swing on small hinges.
That's a really good one. Yeah, I always tell a lot of the clients I work with, because they want to make big changes or they get upset with themselves because they're not doing everything the right way. I'm like, progress over perfection. Like, let's just move in the right direction. We'll keep walking in the right direction. You'll eventually get there. But I think you're right. Some people, they want to do everything the right way, or, but it's like, we just need to take small steps for sure.
Yeah.
So when a client's responding to you and they're reaching out to Fuzzy for the first time, they're asking what type of service you provide, what are some of the questions that come to you with that they need help with in financial therapy?
What I'll generally ask them, especially in that first call, is just ask them, obviously, what's going on? What's making you want to reach out? Like, I want to hear their perspective of what the problem is. But other things I'm going to ask is, what support systems do you have? Are there other people that are part of this picture that one may either join us in therapy or I need to keep in mind? Other things I might ask is, how is the problem affecting your day-to-day life? I may also ask them about what kinds of feelings come up. That trope of therapists asking you, how does that make you feel? Actually, it's a really good question. So, asking them, when you're telling me about this story or you're telling me about these challenges that you're having, what types of feelings are coming up for you? Where do you feel that in your body? And kind of what I'm assessing for is, how much language do they have? Because some people grow up around the language of emotions a lot more, and some people grow up not being able to use emotional language. That's kind of what I'm assessing. I'm also kind of assessing or trying to figure out what connection do they have with their bodies. I might specifically ask them, are you noticing that feeling in your body right now? The reason I do that is because trauma, financial trauma, and all types of trauma often disconnects us from our bodies. I'm having racing thoughts and I'm up here and I'm just thinking, but I'm not thinking about how my stomach is gurgling. I'm not thinking about how my chest is feeling closed off. I'm not thinking about how my hands are feeling tingly or numb. Reconnecting that mind-body experience is actually going to be a very important part of our trauma work. So a lot of what I'm asking is trying to get a gauge of, where are you in your trauma healing? Are you in free fall? Have you done some work around this, but not, maybe there's some more? You can also kind of tell when people have done therapy before, because it's the way they talk. They use certain words, certain language that I'm like, I know that you've done therapy before, and that actually helps me know how to use my words.
Early in the conversation, you were talking more about that dopamine-seeking behavior and responding with money. If you could just talk to us a little bit more about that.
Dopamine is our happy chemical, right? It's a very important part of what keeps our mental health okay. It's not a bad thing at all to seek dopamine. All of us do it. Sometimes one of the kind of myths that I hear is things activate the part of our brain that is our pleasure seeking, and so we can get addicted and things. No, you also get dopamine from hugging grandma. Dopamine is a very normal part of how we function. It's a very important part of how our brain works. We can get dopamine from a whole lot of things. Part of what gives us dopamine is what we've been taught to give dopamine. That good feeling you might get from buying something, part of that comes from, it's nice to get things that we like. But part of that is also because we've been socialized or taught, or we've been shown over time that buying things is fun. That's why we have advertising or marketing. That's why we have TV and movie and other people showing us how happy they are when they buy that thing. That is training our brain to remember, this thing will make me feel good, will give me some of that dopamine. There's not a human alive that isn't subjugated to dopamine-seeking behaviors. The problem becomes when we're not able to find dopamine in lots of different areas. We're only finding it in specific things. Like, I only feel good when I'm shopping. I only feel good when I'm eating something. It's when our dopamine is only coming from certain places and we're not able to have it come from a lot of places. That's when it becomes problematic. It's kind of like food. Like, we need fruits and vegetables, and we need proteins, and we need water, and we need a whole lot of things to keep us healthy, and vitamins and minerals and macronutrients and phytochemicals and all these things that help our body run. If we are neglecting any part of those, messes with us. It's not optimal. It's the same thing with our mental health. If our dopamine is coming from only certain places, then it inevitably will lead to problems.
I want to know, why do you think financial therapy is important, and why do you think there's so small amount of people who know about it? Why is it new? Why is it just starting now that people are starting to hear about it, and why is it important that we start reaching out to people about financial therapy?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. Unfortunately, professionals have really separated in their minds money from emotions. Whether it's traditional financial planning, professionals who typically just are well, this is how you invest, and this is what we do to make wealth grow and get bigger. And then there's mental health therapists who, if we're talking about money that's greedy, there's a lot of moralizing of money that happens in therapy offices. And so therapists either avoid it or just try and refer out and don't really do that work. It is a huge shame because it's not like money problems are new. It's not like only in the last 15 years have our money and our emotions been connected. No, that's been a thing for decades, centuries. And so I am a little disappointed that it's taken as long as it has, but I'm also excited because I do think financial therapy as a concept is catching on. When I talk to people and I tell them I'm a financial therapist, or they, ask me what I do for work, more people than not tell me, oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. That's something I need. Or the phrase that I hear all the time, that's so needed. And it's kind of funny because people intuitively get that this is a worthwhile field and that it's something a lot of people need, but then actually taking the next step and getting their own help doesn't always happen. Your question about why financial therapy, why do we need this? Culture has not set us up to have a healthy relationship with money. Most of us are feeling shame and anxiety on some level around money. It is something that you cannot escape. There is money in every single part of your life. You've never gone a day without making some financial choice. It doesn't mean you've bought something every day, but you've gone to work. You haven't gone to work. All of that stuff impacts your money. You've also never had an unemotional money experience. Your feelings, your thoughts, whether you're conscious of them or not, hugely impact your financial behavior and hugely impact how you feel. So why is financial therapy needed? Because it is literally every part of life. Money isn't the only thing that matters, but it certainly touches everything that does. So I think financial therapy is something that we need to talk about if we want our lives to get better, if we want our families to get better, if we want to break intergenerational chains, different money stories, healing from financial traumas. Financial therapy is necessary for us to heal and for us to progress. That happens individually, in families, in communities, and in our culture. Like, financial therapy is here to stay.
Something that's talked about a little bit in the space of financial therapy is money scripts. Like, what are money scripts?
So money scripts are basically our beliefs, our core beliefs around money. If you've seen Inside Out 2, which is, if you haven't, go correct that immediately because it's such a good movie. But some of the core scripts that we may have about ourselves or beliefs we may have about ourselves is, I'm a good person, I am safe, I am worthy of change, I am a good friend, I'm a good person. We also may have more negative self-beliefs. I'm a bad person, I'm not safe, I can't trust others, I can't trust myself. Financial scripts are kind of that same idea of money is good, money is bad. Rich people are greedy. Money will fix all my problems. I should save for a rainy day. They're beliefs that we have not just about money and like what's good or bad about money. Again, that moralization kind of comes in here, but it's also how we view ourselves in relation to money. I am safe with money. I can trust myself with money. I can't trust myself with money. Money causes problems. Money makes people go away. These are some of our core money beliefs that we need to explore in order to figure out what operating system am I using to make my financial decisions. What's my blueprint that I'm using to build my next financial choice? If I'm coming from a place of scarcity where maybe I didn't grow up with a lot of money, or I lost a job, or something happened in my life where money is no longer as accessible as it once was, that might inform the way I think about myself. And it certainly is going to inform the next financial choice I make. Those kind of money scripts are so impactful. And a lot of times we don't even think about them. These beliefs are not things that we think about consciously. but they are unconscious but still drive a whole lot of our behaviors.
As you talk about money scripts, it makes me think about social media. Can social media tie into money scripts and play a role in it?
Yeah, our money scripts come from our past experiences, but it also comes from the outside world, is what we see around us. If I am on social media and I'm seeing people make certain financial decisions, whether I like it or not, I am going to compare what I'm doing, what I'm experiencing to what I'm seeing them do. If I see my friend on a trip to Italy and I'm like, wow, that's so cool. How come I'm not able to do that? It can start leading to me feeling shame. And the truth is, social media is like, there's a reason that when someone is really authentic on social media, it feels special. Because most of us aren't putting out our day-to-day, we're putting out highlights, the best parts of us, right? And it doesn't matter what the platform is, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, like it's all a mask that we wear. But the problem is if I'm judging myself by the masks that other people wear, it gives me a very distorted view of reality. Reality is most people aren't doing those types of trips without financial consequence. It doesn't mean that everyone is totally blowing the bank in order to go do these things or buy these products. But the truth is a lot of us aren't as financially okay as what we show online, or at least what we see other people online doing. Most of us are bored. Like in our day-to-day, are you actually living that high life all the time? Probably not. Even if you do have really awesome times that you want to share with people, that isn't the norm. So it's really important that when we're talking about social media stuff, we view them through a heavy filter of this doesn't reflect reality. It's kind of like a movie. If I'm watching the Fast and Furious movies, they might be fun and exciting, but it's not going to be what I watch to learn how to drive. My actual financial decisions and my actual emotions and my actual life tends to be a lot more boring, a lot more slow, a lot more, just real. And I think there's beauty in that too. So just know that if you're looking at what other people are doing on social media, especially if they are influencers or if their job is tied to looking a certain way, take it with a heavy grain of salt. Because very likely it's not reflecting what their reality actually is, nor should it reflect what your reality should be.
When you're talking about board and activities, it made me think about different clients that we potentially work with day to day. And some of the clients that we work with have possibly like ADHD. Do you approach those situations a little bit differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Being ADHD informed, even if I'm not like an expert in treating ADHD, even just knowing what it is, possible symptoms can help me help them a lot better. So some things to know, for example, people with ADHD tend to have more dopamine seeking behaviors because that's how their brain is wired. It's no fault of their own. There tends to be a lot of shame and guilt in populations of ADHD because until you know that that's what's going on, the only conclusion you're really able to come to is there's something wrong with me. I'm deficient, I'm bad, I'm lazy, and I'm speaking as someone who has ADHD. There's a lot of internalized beliefs about myself because of ADHD. And so when it comes to money stuff, it tends to layer on. Now, a person with ADHD who may already be feeling shame or feeling like they're not good enough or feeling like they're lazy, or at least that's what they've been told. Now, when they're dealing with money issues, which typically requires a lot more long-term thought, which is really hard when you have ADHD. When you have ADHD, the typical is inattentive, right? It's hard for me to pay attention to something for a long time, especially if that thing is boring. Guess what? A lot of money stuff is kind of boring, so it makes sense why people with ADHD have an especially hard time with money tasks. And their focus jumps around. And so if they're trying to make long-term financial decisions, it can get really difficult. It also can get difficult when they're in relationship with somebody. Maybe that person really wants to have these financial conversations. And maybe the person with ADHD wants to too, but sometimes they just can't. In my work as a financial therapist, one of my jobs is to figure out what are some of the other conditions, diagnoses, symptoms, like things contributing to the financial dysfunction or difficulties. Like, what are the other pieces here to make sure they know this isn't just about money and this isn't just about you being not good with money. It's not about you? Can we take that shame away? Can we remind you, hey, it actually really makes sense why some financial tasks are hard to do? Here's some things we can do about it. How can we build dopamine into your financial experience? Sometimes it just starts with whenever you look at your budget, I want you to have your favorite treat nearby, or I want you to plan something fun before, during, and after. Maybe I make sure to take breaks so that I'm not doing a task for too long. Maybe I make sure that I have accountability systems. Sometimes it's other people that can be a huge piece of this. Maybe, with my ADHD, I tend to be more visual. For example, for me, I have a bunch of sticky notes on my desk because if I don't write something down, my brain forgets it. How can we make your money more visual? There's lots of ways that we can be ADHD informed and make financial systems and personal management systems that work for that type of brain. Having ADHD is not hopeless with your money. There's lots of things you can do, and we just need to make sure that we're doing the thing that works for you, not trying to make you fit into a neurotypical box, because that's not where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to have different ways of doing things, and that's good. It's a good thing about people with ADHD, or really any kind of mental health diagnosis.
Very true. Very true. So something that kept popping up, recurring theme is taking the guilt, taking the shame away. What made you name the podcast Money Minus Shame?
There's two reasons. One, fear and shame are the two most common emotions that I've seen around money. There is a whole lot of financial education. There's a million podcasts out there. There's so much information on how to do money. The truth is there isn't a right way. And that can be really frustrating for people. But if I believe that there's this right way and I'm not living up to it, makes me feel crappy about myself, makes it harder to engage with money. I think of the Dave Ramseys, I think of other types of content creators around money that are very shame-based. I don't believe that shame will ever lead to the outcomes we want it to. And I refuse to play a part of that game anymore. Shame is not going to be something that we ever want you to feel on this podcast. I'm going to put my values out there. Shame is not a way to live. It's just not. And so if we can take the shame out of money minus the shame, I think we can make it a lot more safe emotionally to approach. I think we can actually make some better financial decisions and help people feel like they're not alone, that somehow everyone else seems to have this figured out, but I don't. No, not everyone has this figured out. Most people don't. I don't have it figured out. There's not some standard that we're all trying to live up to. Just figure out your standard. What's good for you? It's not about what's on social media. It's not about what family says. It's not what friends say. It's not what financial institutions say. If you've got debt and financial institutions make you feel guilt and shame around that debt, it's BS. You know what? In the end, money is made up. It's totally arbitrary. Obviously, it still has huge impact, but we don't need to over-identify our identities and who we are with this money thing. In the end, we're people worthy of love, worthy of change, worthy of growth, and that is something we choose to bring to our money.
So I'd like to share a quick story because you brought up Dave Ramsey in the same topic. So when I was first starting out as a financial counselor, I had to work with a client and I had somebody supervising me for my first session, working with the client. And one of the questions that popped up from the client that was seeking financial counseling was, well, there's some podcasts, some money podcasts that I could listen to and get some information from. And I brought up some podcasts I knew, but one of the podcasts I brought up was Dave Ramsey. The person supervising the session came on the camera and said, no, we're not going to be promoting Dave Ramsey. He shames people. I'm not going to be a part of that shaming. But I think she made a great point is we shouldn't be shaming people to do the right thing. That's not going to be a long-term success. We should be giving people the tools. We should be helping them understand the situation. And I hope that this podcast becomes one of those platforms that really helps people. And it definitely takes the shame out of finances. We can understand more of the feelings and give them more of the tools about the spending plans and emotions around all of that. So it's nice to go from recommending the podcast that was shameful to trying to create something that'll actually help people in this space.
Love it. Love that story.
So Nate, when you were starting this podcast, what was your vision for creating the podcast and what did you hope to accomplish by starting this?
I wanted to create a place where we can talk about how mental health and emotions and money are all connected in a way that's safe without shame and in a place that helps people feel like there are things that I can do about this. I also really want to start this podcast so that other professionals who are working somewhere in the mix of mental health and financial health are able to see there are better ways to help our clients move forward. I really just hope this is a place to geek out about financial therapy. This is just the start. Join us as we dig deeper in more topics on money minus shame. Thanks for listening to the Money Minus Shame podcast, powered by the Financial Therapy Clinical Institute. This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for mental health services or financial advice. This is a cafeteria where you can take what you like and leave the rest. Make sure to like and subscribe so you're the first to know when new episodes drop. And if you like what you hear, let us know. Reach out at money-shame@gmail.com or send us a DM with thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like to see us cover. Take care of yourself out there, and we'll see you next time.